Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope to give you some strong first impressions, or strong ideas of what my first impressions are listening to these this really nice set out of the box. The Aria is, in a nutshell, okay? In a nutshell, and I've tried to explain this in several takes, and I've had to redo it for one reason or another. I've been having a tough time explaining this, but in a nutshell, the Aria, is it worth $500? Is it worth a lot of money for only $80? Yes. Okay, in short order, only based on first impressions, yes. It is worth more than $80 compared to much else I've listened to around that price or higher. But here's the catch. It's also, we're in a time now where we have Legacy 2, we have Starfield, and I've got a bunch more coming around this price bracket, under 100, even 200, where a lot of stuff is getting a lot of hype. There's so much around right now that people are happy about, that trying to say something is worth a lot more money is starting to, the whole paradigm it seems to be shifting. So I don't know how true that's going to continue to be. I'll say this. The Aria is, out of the box, listening to my reference playlist, which you can find a link in the description if you want to see what I listened to for it. It's very pleasing. It's beyond pleasing. It's enjoyable. It brings that je ne sais quoi, those loose factors that you have a hard time putting your finger on through your favorite music. It brings those good qualities out. You know those good qualities you get when you listen to a really good headphone for the first time that does something unique to a certain point of the frequency response, or it does something to the vocalist in your favorite song where you hear the reverb around them or the reverb around the strings more. Those kinds of things, those harmonics, the reverb, whatever. Maybe the staging is spectacular or something. The Aria has that factor to them, that I get something really nice. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about. That single feeling, that singular feeling when you get something you really enjoy out of a new piece of gear that you don't always get with everything out of the box. That's what these provide. But the thing is, so did the Legacy. So did the Starfield, which is in my mannequin with really good mics. I have a good review demo coming, improved sound demos of the Starfield Legacy and the Aria coming after this, okay? Right after I finish this impression video recording, I want to start recording demos of each of these for you guys to hear something better than I've ever presented on this channel before. And if you're not already subscribed and you really want to hear just as close to real life as I've heard this gear being demonstrated online, please subscribe or consider subscribing to catch that when it comes out. So let's continue with some impressions. It might help if I whip out some graphs just to kind of articulate what I'm saying. Again, thank you to Bad Guy Good Audio Reviews for providing this tool, or at least providing, I guess, a lot of data. His watermark's on the page I bookmarked, so I assume that means he produced a lot of the data on here, maybe all of it. Or something. I should know more about the story behind this whole thing, but I don't. I know his watermark's there. He's a great guy. He's done a lot of diligent recording for frequency tuning stuff. So really got to give credit to him and anybody else who contributed to the data here. But his watermark is here, so I'm mentioning it. Anyway, so let's bring up the Moondrop Aria first. This is the Aria graph. Graphs don't really mean a whole lot unless you've seen them a lot before and you've taken your time recognizing what you tend to hear and stuff compared to what those things say they do on paper. Okay, on paper by itself, this kind of shows you that it has enough bass to be heard and it dips down. You actually want this dip in a lot of stuff for bass to feel like prominent enough, but you don't want it too high because then you barely hear the mids anymore. And then that can make it feel like recessed, like the vocals or instruments can feel recessed if the bass is too high. So this kind of tells you the bass isn't too high, because really high on these graphs would be like up here. And some stuff really actually does go that crazy, like Raycons. Is that what they're called? I can't remember. But anyway, what was I saying? So here we got the Aria. Let's bring up the Legacy 2, the thing we're going to compare these two against. And we're going to compare it against also the Starfield in blue. It's hard to see with 3 lines, but we're going to try. So the red here is the Legacy 2. You can see, and what I was saying about if you elevate the bass, it kind of warms things up and can give the impression of recessed mids. The Legacy 2 has that a little bit. It has a little bit of an elevation on the red, and the mids get recessed because of it, to the ear, to the brain. You psychoacoustically, you don't hear it as much, even though it looks like it would be the same in terms of dB produced by the earphone as these others. But the dB produced by the bass is higher, to the point where your brain actually just doesn't compute the mids as clearly as the other guys. And then you get to the treble, and it can get really different and crazy in the treble. But what we see there is that the Aria in green, let's actually reduce this back down to let's just take the Legacy 2 as an example for now. So Legacy 2 in red, Aria in green. The Aria is lower in the sub bass, which is going to allow for the mids to sound more present to the brain. And then the Aria in green here is staying lower than the Legacy 2 in certain treble spots. So you would think that that would mean that the treble isn't as clear, or maybe not. You'll hear in the recordings whether or not you actually catch any of that. But that's the biggest difference that I catch between the Legacy. Now let's go over to the Starfield. The Starfield in blue is... Oh, wrong one turned on. The Aria in green, let's change Starfield to a different color. Purple? Yeah. So Starfield's now in purple. The Starfield is even lower in the bass, which would make you even hear everything else even punchier. And that is kind of what happens. The Starfield does come across as punchier in certain instruments and places in the mids. But there's something about what's happening that still leads the Starfield to sound shouty, and maybe it's the purple up here, maybe it's the treble. If I had to look at it, if I had to try to explain everything by what's on paper, which you shouldn't always try to do, but trying to just, in this impression video, trying to give some rationale of where I'm coming from with my impressions, maybe the upper part in the Starfield here, in the purple, explains why it sounds at times sibilant or shouty, like to the point where you get fatigued. And with the sub bass also dipped down, it means that the Starfield feels even more so than what just appears here by a little bit. I don't know how much we can take this stuff. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but let's go back to the primary. Let's go back to the main question here. Let's put back up the Aria. Let's put up like the Zens up. So is this worth $500? Is the Aria in green worth something even $700 like the up in blue? Well, take what I just said about the tuning, about these cheaper sets. The up, these guys, the up has a big sub bass, and it kind of bleeds into the mids. It doesn't kind of go down quickly enough to allow for the mids to shine. So what ends up happening, and in the up, the treble dips a bunch here compared to something like the Aria. So what ends up happening is that you have a very warm set to the brain for the up, for the Zens up. And the Aria compared to the up probably is preferred for people's enjoyment, their personal enjoyment, what they want to get out of the mids, more forwardness. I think people are actually going to prefer the Aria over the up. Based on my first impressions, and based then when I look at the graph after what I've listened to first, I always listen to things with my ears first. I want to see what I feel first. Then I look at the graphs and try to see where that story can line up and how I can try to help people, because it helps explain things if it ends up actually fitting what I'm hearing. If the graph shows something I don't hear, I'm going to say that, okay? But that graph actually did. Looking at it after the fact of listening, it seems to match what I'm hearing fairly well. Because the Zen's Up, when I put those things in my ear, as beautiful as they are, and as well as I think they play with their better technologies, they have different, it's a tribrid. It has like electrostats in them. I mean, they're gonna play they're gonna play things with better resolution in different parts of the frequency response because of drivers handling them separately. I think that's why it works that way. But they are more resolving. But the Aria is so well tuned for my personal preferences, and I think many others too, possibly, that you could say these are worth more to your wallet than spending on the Up. I would actually say you can have this in an S class. And my S class, check my rankings list in the description if you want to see the full list. But I would put these from out-of-the-box impressions only as an S class, right up there with the Clairvoyance, which is $700. Because these are resolving enough. Even though it's only one driver, it's resolving enough with such good tuning for my personal subjective opinions on what I want to get out of my music that these are worth a lot of money to me. The mids are forward. The instruments and vocals are clear enough because of the tuning allowing them to be so forward. And the bass is not so recessed that you miss having the bass. You still get the warmth of it enough when you want it. Well, when I want it anyway. And the lower mids are enough to punch and slam. And the trebles enough to be clear without being sibilant. It's like, I think, more of a closer balance to what I personally want to get out of my library and my tastes than the Legacy 2 or the Starfields. But both of those are still good options for the price. It really just depends on your personal tastes. My personal tastes put the Legacy 2 as an A+, the Starfield as an A+. That means that they could be contributors to your main IEM. If something's more balanced and you want something more warm, go for the Legacy 2 in addition to your set. If you have a balanced set as your mainstay, you can go for the Starfield as the punchy, fun, wild set. And then Aria is just kind of like, I'm just going to give you the perfect balance compared to these guys. But hey, a fuller review video is coming. This is basically a full review at this point, except for the demos. I just want to say, before you guys go, if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe so you can get that and like the video. It actually really helps the algorithm and everything. So if you like what I'm doing here, if you like my commentary, please feel free to subscribe and like. And I want to mention, I should have mentioned this earlier, I have a Patreon. I mention it all the time probably, but I'm giving away in my Patreon this month, or the end of next month, Tin Hi-Fi P1, which is a $150 set. I only have one Patreon right now, patron, so he's pretty much guaranteed to get it. For $15 a month, he's going to get a $150 set. If somebody else joins, then it's a 50-50 chance. And if enough people join, I'm going to raise the bar on how many items I give away or the cost of each item that I give away. So really excited to get your support from Patreon and get more gear with that money to give such commentary and more demos. But demos are coming. I'm looking forward to it. See you guys. Hope it helps you buy or choose what you want to buy.